saint. Right or right. Many claim they lie riding, but I know that they ain't. Right or right. I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Right or right. Many claim they lie riding, but I know that they ain't. They see the red and they call me a devil, but mind the treble, let me level with you. I used to idolize rappers that paint they face, but now I rock the blood of Christ ever since I've been saved by grace.
Hey, James, I got no audio. For everyone who's watching live, I've rarely been on. I've rarely been on a live stream where there were not technical difficulties.
Well, I appreciate you holding down the fort. I had to start this with the other device, and then I lost the audio on this device when I did that, and then I had to back out. Well, at least I have good-looking back wallpaper, I guess, on the video. That's a positive.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Thank you for those who are joining. I didn't get to share the link out as soon as I wanted to, but tonight's guest is Mr. David Wood. David, what do you got going on, like, in kind of this immediate future?
We're about to do a pretty cool Quran website launch. You guys will see that. Anyway, that's what we're working on at this second. But yeah, you'll see that. We're going to do a soft launch first, meaning checking it for bugs and stuff like that, and we'll message people we know and stuff like that. But we'll be looking for some bugs in the system, and then once we're sure everything is up and running, it's pretty cool. It's my friend Danny who's, well, I don't want to give it. I was about to give the site out, but my friend Danny somehow got a really awesome domain, and we've got it. He's got it set up to where it's got the different qira'at on there. So all the different versions of the Quran that Muslims don't know about because they've been told there's only one version of the Quran, even though there are a bunch. Hatun Tash is really the one who exposed that myth. And now Muslims admit that there are different versions in different parts of the world. They were forced to admit that because she was showing up to Speaker's Corner with multiple different Arabic versions of the Quran and showing them to people. And so anyway, we've got it to where Arabic and English, different qira'at. So you can actually look at the different qira'at, which is interesting because some of them have contradictory meanings, which the reason that's a problem is for years, Muslims were saying perfect preservation right down to the letter, no difference anywhere between any two Qurans. And now they're saying, yes, Allah revealed it in a bunch of different ways, but these all complement and expand upon each other. Well, that they complement each other doesn't work if they contradict each other in the meanings of these verses. So anyway, we've got the text of the site up. Now we're loading it with video commentary. So the video commentary we'll be adding to a lot in the coming years. But we're getting enough to do a soft launch here very, very quickly. But yep. So anyway, fun stuff. It's cool for anyone who's watching, guys. We're just getting started. Everyone, we're just getting started. If you Muslims who are watching, if you think, oh, all this stuff coming out about Muhammad and all this stuff coming out about the Quran, refuting all the lies of our Dawagandists and so on, guess what? It's just getting started. We are barely warmed up. This just started very recently. So, yeah.
Yeah, I got this shortly after talking with Fareed Responds. It is the Robert Spencer, his the Critical Quran. It's really good. I kind of like going through it and seeing like some of the different translations because I had 2 conversations with Fareed Responds where he's discussing what you were saying about the different versions of the Quran. Because one part in particular that I mentioned to him was that if you take the different versions and you line them up, when Moses is speaking, it seems like the story is being told differently several times. And so, from at least my perspective, it would look like it conflicts. And he actually indicated that it's paraphrase, that it's not actually quoting.
Mhm. And notice that's just it's amazing that he even admitted that. Like that's impressive. It doesn't work. Their explanations don't work. And by the way, they had these problems during the time of Muhammad, where Muhammad's different companions were reciting the Quran differently, and they're ready to fight each other. And then Umar drags this guy over. This guy's reciting the Quran differently. And Muhammad says, okay, you go ahead and recite it your way. And he tells Umar, you go ahead and recite it your way. And he says, and Allah revealed both of these. And so what's interesting about that, and the explanation, which doesn't fit, this can't possibly be talking about different dialects. That's the modern Muslim explanation. It's just different dialects of the Quran because there were different dialects of Arabic. Those guys were both from the same tribe. They were from the same tribe. They spoke the same dialect. Why would they be speaking different dialect? But the other problem with that is, notice, Allah has been revealing the Quran in 7 different ways. That's what the passage says. Allah revealed it in 7 different ways. And Umar's just hearing about this for the first time. I mean, that guy converted to Islam after the conquest of Mecca. And you're telling me that all along Allah's been revealing this in 7 different ways, all these different versions of these verses. And no one's ever heard of this until Muhammad announces it after the problem is noticed, after they realize, wait a minute, these guys are reciting the Quran in different ways. Oh, that's because Allah revealed it. In other words, it's different today when people who weren't there say, it was revealed in 7 different ways. Very different when Muhammad's telling his own companions, oh, that's because Allah's been revealing it in different ways. And they go, wait, what? Since when did this start? And so it's just an interesting situation, because if you go back 5 years, no Muslim is going to admit in the presence of any just average Muslim, in other words, the scholars always knew this. The scholars have always known about these problems. They lied to Muslims and they lied to non-Muslims about the preservation of the Quran. Perfect preservation, right down to I have Muslim apologetics books filled with claims. No difference between, not one letter's difference between any 2 Qurans anywhere in the world at any point in history. And this is a miracle of Islam, and it's totally nonsense. So even if they're admitting, this one's a paraphrase or something like that, those explanations don't work. But it's glad that we're at least making progress, and that they're starting to back off the claim of just one perfectly preserved Quran. So anyway, progress is hard in Islam, especially when you have a bunch of scholars who are constantly lying, who've also spent all their time manipulating people into blindly accepting everything they say. It's good when they're starting to admit some of the truth, but they're not fully there yet. But these are fun times, man. There's if you want to expose lies and talk to Muslims and share the gospel with Muslims and tell them how they've been misled, there is no better time in history than right now and the near future.
And we have a super chat. DJ, thank you. He says, God bless you guys. Sounds like an awesome project and super useful. I've been saying we need an online version of the Quran that's easy to navigate for a while. When I go to some of the ones that I get from different Muslims, I'm just uncomfortable with the app. It just doesn't feel like my Bible Hub app, which would be much more convenient if it was similar.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, if you want a really, 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 really good, your wish is about to be granted, James. This one's cool.
So more to come on that. You also have a couple of YouTube Spring Up channels since gifting Hatun yours. Would you share to list the names off, and I'll also add them in the description later for others?
Yeah, there's not a ton of content. I've been working on some other stuff and all kinds of other stuff. But yes, but Act 17 polemics, I basically realized in the past that it was an ongoing problem of all my content being jumbled together on one site, because then, even though I'll have one video that's just straightforward apologetics or a testimony or something like that, that's lumped together with me, like, just mocking Muhammad and so on. And that's a problem for the algorithm. The algorithm can't figure out what your channel is about. It's a problem for viewers, because some viewers like one kinds of content. They might like testimony videos, but don't like, making fun of Muhammad or something like that. And it's a problem with the YouTube trust and safety team, because when they're constantly flagging videos, even though I don't post content that violates any of the rules, they have a sort of, YouTube now has a block and flag and strike first, and then you defend yourself. It's sort of like a guilty until proven innocent system, where they just flag anything that includes certain words and stuff like that, and then you have to defend yourself. But notice all my content was being shut down during that time when I'd be blocked. Not shutting down the channel, but like, they ban you for 2 weeks. You can't upload. You can't upload straightforward apologetics. So I just recognized that there was a problem with the way it was going, that I was being banned like 1 to 3 times per month. It was just impossible to get any sort of momentum going. So anyway, I decided to divide up the content. So Acts 17 Polemics is actually run by 2 other Christians, but they're uploading content that's sort of directed towards criticizing Islam. Then I have Apologetics Roadshow. That's just straightforward apologetics content. And then I have a channel, which is also, I have a channel called Philosophy Underground, which, I got a PhD in philosophy, and I just decided that there is a lot of stuff I'm interested in talking about philosophy wise. So yeah, different channels depending on people's interests.
Yeah, that might be a good segue to a Christian topic. How many times would you say that when you're engaged in conversations, do people ask you about the Trinity?
Who? We talking Muslims or non-Muslims?
Mainly Muslims.
Oh yeah. Those are the first things that pop up usually: Trinity or deity of Christ. In fact, this is important for Christians to know, because a lot of Christians think that they're not equipped to get into discussions with Muslims, because they think there are all these things that they don't know, and they'll have to study for years to get into conversations with Muslims, because Muslims are going to have all these objections, and they don't. They have a couple of objections, right? They have your Bible's been corrupted. Where did Jesus say, "I'm God, worship me"? If Jesus is God, how can he die? The Trinity doesn't make sense. If Jesus died for your sins, doesn't that mean you can sin all you want? It's just a couple, right? There'll be variations of it. So if Jesus is God, how could he die? If Jesus is God, how could he be born? If Jesus is God, how could he get hungry or something like that? Notice that's all the same objection. It's not understanding the doctrine of the incarnation. But the point is, if you know ahead of time that Muslims are always going to bring up these objections, then those would probably be a few good things to learn, and then you're already prepared for 95% of the discussions you might get into with Muslims. But yes, bringing up the Trinity and deity of Christ is pretty automatic.
Yeah, I noticed that first when I started engaging with Muslims, that the Trinity was like the number one go-to conversation piece. And I realized that I hadn't really read that much material on it. I was just always satisfied with one being and 3 persons. But I think when you start looking at some of the neat philosophical literature and the things that are going on today, and social Trinitarianism versus Latin Trinitarianism and relative identity, there's a lot of different variations and models that really do seem to make the Trinity work, and some that don't. So I always try to point this out whenever I mention the Trinity on a live, that Christian scholarship says an apparent contradiction, but not an actual logical contradiction. There's a very big difference between the two.
Yeah, people who call it a contradiction don't understand what a contradiction is, right? A contradiction, like saying that the Trinity is basically saying that God is one in one way, more than one in another way, right? So God is one in essence or being or person. Essence or being or nature, and more than one in person. And for Muslims to say that's a contradiction, you don't understand what you're talking about. Like I could say about Allah, Allah is one in essence or being, and he's more than one in attribute. So Allah has a bunch of different attributes, and sometimes those attributes are in conflict with one another. So there's a hadith, a famous hadith, where Allah says his mercy triumphs over his wrath. So in other words, his wrath is calling for one thing, just punish this guy. His mercy is calling for something else. They're in conflict, and one attribute overpowers another attribute. Well, no Muslim's going to say this means there's more than one Allah. Why? Because when you say that Allah is one in one way and more than one in this other way, that's not a contradiction. That's not what a contradiction is. You'd have to be saying, as a matter of fact, if you look at an explanation, at a definition of a contradiction, it includes qualifications. It's like saying that A and not A are both true at the same time in the same sense. We're not saying God is 1 and 3 in the same sense. Those are two different things. So you have that, and notice, I mean, Muslims really haven't grasped that if you have a problem with this doctrine, that it's one in one way, more than one in a different way, what do you do with other things that you guys believe in? I mean, you could just say, the Quran is one in, how many books it is. It's more than, or one in being the speech of Allah. It's more than one in chapter. So it's 114 in chapter, depending on who you go with. If you go with Ubay ibn Ka'b, it's 116. If you go with Ibn Masud, it's 111, and so on. But notice, even more so than that, Muslims say one Quran. Wait a minute, I thought you had 7 different qira'at. But they complement each other. So it's 1 and 7 at the same time, right? It's 1 and 10, depending on what number of qira'at you want to go with. But they're not the same. They're different things. In other words, you can line up the verses. They're saying different things, and yet it's just one. Okay, well, guys, if you can believe that the Quran is one in one way and more than one in another way, don't tell us about contradictions, or we will find those contradictions all over your sources. And by the way, little side note, I don't bring this up much. I should make a video about it, but matter of fact, it'd be good as like a skit. But these guys, what you really mean when they complain about the Trinity, since it's not any sort of actual contradiction, is that it's confusing to them, or they can't get their minds around it, or something like that. What would be fun with a skit is like a group of these Dawa guys, and they're in like a cosmology class, like studying the cosmos or something. And then the professor starts talking about quantum mechanics or Einstein's theory of relativity or something like that. And the Dawa guys are all cracking up laughing. Ha ha, this is so stupid. This is, that's a contradiction. In other words, you couldn't be a modern physicist or cosmologist and have their kind of thinking where, oh, that's hard to understand, so must not be true. Or that sounds really weird, must not be true. So anyway, yeah, just those are some of the issues that come up.
Yeah, and how do you feel like the dialogue has progressed? Like, I know you said that it's like the best time ever to understand or be able to get a hold of sources. How do you see like the misinformation versus the correct information competing?
Well, it's really weird because that's where the battle is, right? It's like a race. It's there. Matter of fact, it's a literal race. Muslim Dawa guys are looking at this, going at current rates of growth based on birth rates. Islam will be the most popular religion in the world in a few decades, and may even be taking over major European cities in just a few decades. So the thinking is, we just have to hold off the avalanche of apostasy long enough to become powerful enough to where you're not allowed to criticize anymore. We'll just chop your head off. Right? So they're looking forward to the future, thinking, we just have to hold this off for a few decades. We have to keep people in a state of ignorance and deception for a few decades, and then no one's going to be allowed to criticize it. We'll be able to physically stop people from bringing up this information. Whereas we're in that same race, but we're trying to get people to know the truth about what's in the Muslim sources faster than their Dawa guys can deceive people. Because note, I mean, all their arguments. I mean, especially about the Quran. It's one Quran and is revealed to Muhammad and compiled during the time of Muhammad. And then there's always been one, and that gets exposed. And then they fall back on another deception. It's just different dialects. Okay, well, we expose that one. Now, but their differences, they're not different dialects, but they complement one another. And okay, that doesn't work because they contradict each other. So now we're waiting for the new explanation that they're going to rally around. But yeah, so that those are really what the two sides are doing. It's us trying to get enough people to leave Islam so that they don't, get to a position where they can silence us all through violence, versus those who are just trying to plug all the wounds long enough for Islam to take over. But I don't know. It's certainly fun to watch. But notice when people are changing their minds, they're realizing that there are problems with all of these arguments that they used in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, and all of a sudden we get the internet, we get open access to all their sources, and now their claims are falling apart. So anyway, it's not boring. It's fun. These are fun times.
Yeah, and if you could debate one current Muslim apologist, who would you like to sit across the table from?
Oh, Zakir Naik.
Zakir Naik.
Yeah, but he doesn't debate.
He does a lot of quotations where he's memorized passages primarily.
Yeah, he did that way back in the day. He realized from watching D-Dot, so he's a student of D-Dot, and he realized back in the day that if you just memorize a bunch of references, that wows the Muslim crowd. They think as long as you've memorized it and you're quoting it, we'll pay no attention to whether you're actually answering the question or whether you make any sort of sense. It just sounds like you know what you're talking about. And that's really the difference between Islamic apologetics and like Christian apologetics. The goal in Islamic apologetics is not to give a good answer. It's to sound like you gave a good answer. That's it. If you sound, I call this Islam's 99-1 rule. As long as you sound like you gave a good answer and it sounds like that to 99 people out of 100, well, the 99 can silence the one who goes, wait a minute, that doesn't really answer the question. It's not actually a good response. And so in Islam, the goal is always just sound like you gave a good response. And even if it's complete nonsense, just sound good enough to convince the 99%. And if you do, they'll silence the 1% who are actually thinking about what you said. So Zakir Naik, he realized way back in the day that's what persuades Muslim audiences. He memorized a bunch of passages. He debated like 2 or 3 people way back in the day, people that no one's ever heard of, and one of them was William Campbell, who's actually smart, but he's not a debater, and the other guy was some Christian pastor. And after that, ever since then, when you challenge him to a debate, no, he doesn't debate. He's already taken on Christians. And notice anyone could do that. So it's a brilliant move. You could go find a Muslim who is not a debater, has never debated before, and completely destroy him in public debate. And then you could find some imam who doesn't know anything about debate, and he's really nice and loving, and you just destroy him. And then you say, ha, I've destroyed their debaters. I don't have to debate anymore. And that's what Zakir Naik did. He's never once faced an actual Christian debate. And keep in mind, their debaters who are way better than I. Their Christian debaters who are way better than I. He's never faced one, even though they've all challenged him. And if you ask him why, hey, why don't you actually debate an experienced Christian debater? You get these, if you can guarantee 10,000 people that you're bringing to the venue, blah, blah. It's like, how do you do that? Like, one, how do you guarantee who's coming? 2, 10,000? Like, what are you going to rent the Superdome or something like that to have a debate? This is online. You could have the debate online. You could have the debate in a hotel room. People watch it online. And so what you find, and notice, by the way, those other debates, there might have been like 100, 200 people at each one of those debates. You didn't have that criterion back then. And so these are just excuses from a man who knows that if he were facing any actual Christian debater, he would get I don't mean if he were facing the best Christian debater. I mean, if he was facing a Christian debater who's had some debate experience, he would get crushed. He would still sound to his own audience like he knows what he's talking about just by reciting the verses. But anyone who's actually following the arguments, Naik is he's just not good. He's not a good debater. There are Muslim debaters who are way better than Zakir Naik, but people think that he's like the champion because he's never actually faced anyone. It's kind of pathetic, but that's dawah for you.
Yeah, I've noticed the past couple of years there's a huge Muslim presence on YouTube. Um, the Dawa channels are absolutely blowing up, and I wonder how much of that is due to like because it's different in Christianity. Like we're taught to give because it's going to help somebody, the poor or needy, but they have like a reward system that seems built in. How much do you think that influences the intense donations behind some of these larger YouTubers?
Um, yeah, I mean, I can't say because you could have the same thing in Christianity. You could have people who are doing it because they really believe in it. You could have people who are doing Christian apologetics because they see that there are all these challenges that Christians are facing and so on. And you could just have someone who says, hey, it's a living, and I can make money this way. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's going to have to come down to the person, but the real reason that you're seeing this explosion of dawa, and it's the reason why you're going to have a big problem figuring out people's motives, is that Christians are in a similar boat in that for a long time you basically have Christians over here and you have Muslims over here and you have Hindus over here and you have Buddhists over here. And you could be, as a Muslim back in the day, you could be a Muslim in a Muslim country, in a Muslim town with your imam your entire life and never hear Islam criticized. You never have any reason to think that something else might be true. And, if you go back centuries, you could be a Christian in a Christian town and your entire life you're raised in a church. You never hear any objections from atheists or anything like that. So back then, it was very easy to maintain a community of Christians, a community of Muslims, a community of Hindus. Then we start getting into more recent times, and all of a sudden, because of the internet, because of populations being mixed up, now all of a sudden people are exposed to all kinds of different ideas, and they're exposed to criticisms and so on. So it's pretty natural that some people, when they're exposed to different options from around the world, are going to say, you know what, I don't believe this anymore. I believe that, and so people are going to leave whatever they happen to be born into. But in Islam, one of the lies, one of the myths that they spread, because I heard this over and over and over again, but in the 1990s and the early 2000s, even kept hearing that no one leaves Islam. No one ever leaves Islam, which is ridiculous. You go back to the Muslim sources. I mean, Abu Bakr had to fight the apostate wars. He had to fight wars with people who were leaving Islam. And you go back to the Muslim sources, some of his own scribes were leaving Islam because they realized what a fraud he was. And so the idea, no one leaves Islam, it was just a common myth. And if you said, hey, I was a Muslim and I converted to Christianity, or I was a Muslim and now I'm an atheist, they'd say, oh, you're a liar, you're a Jew lying, and you're paid by Jews and things like that. You were never a Muslim, you were always a Christian, and now you're just trying to deceive people. They make excuses like that when it just became so obvious that there are so many ex-Muslims that they had to drop that lie, that dawah lie. And then, because some of these Muslims were known, some of these ex-Muslims were Muslims, and they were known, like Farhan Qureshi. He became, I think he's gearing towards Eastern religions, but Farhan Qureshi was part of the Muslim Debate Initiative. Abdullah Samir, who's an atheist now, he was doing online dawah and stuff before he left Islam.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah. Abdullah's cool. But so what happens is now they can't say that these guys are all just pretending. And then they start complaining. It's actually happening so fast. They're calling it. We didn't invent this. They called it the avalanche of apostasy. That wherever they go, there's so many Muslims leaving Islam that their parents are in a state of panic. And that's why I said that Christians and Muslims can be in a similar boat, and that Christians know, there are Christians, plenty of Christians who know what it's like for their kids to go off to college and to come back and say they don't believe in Christianity anymore. But when that's happening to Muslims, and they were raised to believe that no one ever leaves Islam, and then their own kids are leaving Islam, and it's an honor shame culture, so that it's assumed if your child leaves Islam, it's because you were a bad parent. You were just a defective, horrible parent, and not your kids just, they're individuals, and they concluded something different from what you believe after doing their own investigation. But you have a lot of Muslims out there in a state of absolute panic. They're panicking over their kids, they're panicking over their friends, they're panicking. And so what do you do? What do you do when people are leaving Islam and you have no idea what to do about it? You think dawah. We need more dawah guys. And so you have all these people who are willing to fund the dawah because they think that's what's going to save their community from the avalanche of apostasy. So we need to be saved from because keep in mind, if you're talking about Christians, we're not told, hey, Christianity is going to spread, we're going to take over the world, crush everyone. We're just going to crush everyone. If we did say that, I mean, if you read the scriptures, we're going to be persecuted. We're going to be persecuted. People are going to be persecuting us, right? So it doesn't affect us in the same way. If we think people are leaving Christianity, okay, that sounds like what we would expect. When they're told people are leaving Islam, keep it that affects their entire view of the validity of their religion. They're supposed to keep expanding until they take over, and all religion is for Allah. That's what they're taught. So when there's this avalanche of apostasy, it's no, how's this possible? We're supposed to take over. And so what are we going to do? Well, it must be us. We must be doing something wrong. We must be doing something wrong. So how do we fix it? We fix it by dawah. So you have an entire Muslim community out there doing everything they can right now to support the dawah, which means if you're in a position, if you are in the correct position, and if you as a Muslim really want to enter dawah and start preaching Islam, this is a perfect time to do it because there are plenty of people who are going to support you and lift you up and hold you up. But if you're just a total grifter and, hey, I really want a quick way to earn some money through support and stuff, same thing. It's same thing. There are plenty of people out there. As long as you can school some Christian, if you I schooled him, or even more, if you can win a convert, if you win a convert, this woman converted after my powerful preaching. They're going to shower you. They're going to shower you with money and support. So, that's just the situation. So that's the rise of dawah, and that's why I said you can't really tell if this dawah guy. You can't tell until maybe down the road he gets exposed or something like that. But that's the situation they're in. Basically, it's a good time. It's sort of an interesting situation because this is a good time to enter the world of dawah but it's because they're panicking because so many people are leaving Islam. So tons of people leaving Islam. That sounds really bad for them, but that means that it's a good time to enter dawah, and that's where we're at.
What I'd like to see too is us get some kind of a Christian YouTubers community where we can navigate and try to help each other out. Because one thing that I have to say I am impressed with the dawah channels is they all seem to be connected. And if you're talking about the Bible, they send a message and they get this other guy who's another YouTuber to pop on their channel, and they can just snap of a finger do it. But I feel like in Christianity, we're not as organized in that sense. We're not all connected in that way.
We actually, if you look at the dawah channels, it's they can basically get along with people who are on the same page on a lot of the theological issues, because some of them are constantly calling each other kafirs and things like that. You're not real Muslims, because they have major differences. Some of them believe that Allah actually has literal body parts, some of them don't, and so on. And they'll condemn each other based on those things. But yeah, they are in more of an emergency mindset than we are. They're in more of a panic mode, so they're willing to rally around each other. Whereas, we're Christian YouTubers just, hey, I want to jump on YouTube and share some of these thoughts, and it's a cool time because now I can reach people around the world and so on. But it'd be cool if Christians were more on the same page, because I don't know, I really think we can get along better than they do, right? like when they're declaring each other unbelievers or non-Muslims or heretics for views that are, part of a mainstream sect of Islam. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, somebody did point this out. We do have some online Christian community on Clubhouse. It's a social app where we debate, talk theology. You'll see some of those videos on the channel. Also want to give a shout out to God Logic Apologetics. A great friend, has an amazing channel that's growing. Chris Claus, another good brother in Christ. Chloe, one of the few Christian channels focusing on abortion. I appreciate her work. Jai Apologetics, always love talking with Jai. And Albie does not have a channel currently, but he's active in Clubhouse ministry.
Whoa, a commenter said God Logic just hit 30,000. That's crazy. That's awesome. Cause I mean,
Congratulations.
I mean, we just heard about him last year, right? And so that's awesome.
Yeah, he's caught that lightning in a bottle. And I was telling people that when you're on YouTube, you got to, and I always say like pro wrestling, you got to be yourself, but dialed up. And you don't want to be someone else because they're already going to be better than you as themselves. So you trying to be them isn't going to distinguish you from the crowd. But if you are you and you are unique and you're breaking the mold, then people will watch your content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and if not, you're doing it for Christ anyway.
Yeah, and I mean there are certain. I mean there are things where you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like there are things that, okay, this is how to do a good thumbnail, or this is how how to make a good title, or these are topics that people are interested in. But yeah, you have to make it your own. Otherwise, as you pointed out, the other guy that you're copying is going to be better at it, and you might come across as inauthentic if you're trying to act like someone else.
Thank you for the super chat, Omar. It looks like, I don't know if that's a channel name, but Albie may have a channel. If Albie does, somebody message me and I will add that to the description so people can check him out. Very cool, very level-headed.
100 just commented and said, yeah, Albie's on YouTube. He just started. So he said it's this Assyrian guy.
Oh, fantastic. I'm looking through the chat because we'll get ready to end the video in just a few minutes. I try to keep these no more than 40. I think 30 to 40 is more manageable. Like when I host debates on the channel, I usually make the debates kind of short too, because you'll have debates that'll be 3 hours and then the guys are repeating themselves, and I just not useful. But I feel like if you can have like an hour and a half structured format that you can put people into, then they'll hit their main points and then the audience learns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always a trade-off. So you could do a 3-day debate and go into a ton of detail. Most people aren't going to watch it. So or you could have like a 30-minute debate, and yeah, as you pointed out, you might not be able to go into as much. Well, you definitely won't be able to go into as much detail, but especially for people who are looking for an introduction to the issues, they can get the main ideas.
We do have a question for you. It says, David, would you consider recording a bunch of YouTube shorts and then uploading them throughout the span of a few weeks or months?
I've been planning on doing shorts for a while. My main problem is always just I don't like learning to do new stuff. And I look at that and I go, wait, that video is different from what I make. And I'll go into my editing program and I can't make videos that shape like that. So I'm like, okay, so I have to learn something extra. I have to learn so I'll have to use some other program to make the video shape like that, which means I'll have to watch tutorials. So I'll do it, but I would rather have someone else do it for me. So just so everyone knows, I'm going to hire someone to do that, but I'm waiting for.
Nice.
I mentioned it before. I'm waiting for my friend. My friend Randy is for those who saw my testimony video last year. I said I wanted to hire someone to do stuff like that, to where I don't have to learn an extra program, because I'm really terrible at learning new stuff. The stuff I use, I know it inside and out. But if it doesn't do something, then it takes me forever to learn something new. So I want to hire people to do stuff. But my friend Randy is waiting on his answer from the parole board. I spoke at his parole. Randy's the guy that I knew in jail, who started arguing with me in jail, and I eventually became a Christian. And so I think I said in my testimony, but this was a guy who turned himself in for 21 felonies. He walked into a police station, confessed to everything he'd ever done, and they locked him up. And anyway, I spoke at his parole hearing this year. I said, look, you let this guy out, I could give him a job the day he gets out. He's going to have to learn some editing, but the guy's insanely intelligent and awesome art skills. And so the rest he can just learn. Anyway, the side point is, Randy can be getting out any time now. If so, then I'm going to have him. That'll probably be the first thing I tell him to learn how to do like shorts and stuff like that. And I just basically want a situation where, okay, I sit down, you tell me exactly what to do and how long to say it, and then we roll with that. But yeah, we'll have all sorts of cool stuff coming out this year.
Yeah, if you need any help with shorts or that, or Randy, when he gets out, he can message me and I can message with him. And like, there's some really easy tools just for the phone that you can do a lot of this not even having to go to a computer. And you can upload it in high def, and you can edit the audio, put music in the background. There's a lot of easy ways to navigate it. To be honest, I'll let a secret out. I do 90% of my editing is on the phone.
Dang. I can't even imagine that. I can't imagine editing a video on a phone. But I mean, I don't really use apps. I just use my phone to talk and to send text messages. And I usually don't even have my phone. But that's what I mean. Like, technology progressed a lot faster than I did, and now everyone can do all these things. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of lost. And so it's either I have to learn it or I have to get someone else to do it. And but yeah, if you know a really easy way that you can think of that even like I'm not terribly old, but think of me as a really old man who's really totally incompetent at stuff. Got someone who, if you look and say, here's a video that can explain it for an old person who doesn't know anything, let me know, because I'll do it. Because I mean, some of those videos take off. Like, I'm not terribly personally. I'm like you. I don't like the 4-hour videos, but I don't necessarily like 40-second videos. I feel like you're not going into enough detail. But those are popular because there are people sitting at they're sitting at a bus stop, and you're not going to watch a 20-minute video, but you can watch little short videos while you're sitting there. And so they do take off. So yeah, I do want to do some of those.
Yep. And thank you for those who joined. David, if you don't mind, I'll catch you for 1 second after we're done. Mm-hmm. Appreciate all the viewers. Appreciate the people who click a like. That helps. Like I said, it kicks the algorithms.
Hey James, just so you know, since you like short shows, happy to join you again.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, if you want to go again next month or something like that, we're good.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll shoot you a message and try to figure out like what would be a good time and good date. And I'll kick the outro, and then we will be done. Thank you guys again for watching. If I can find the outro.
I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die. Many claim they lie.